This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutastrophe. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. I'm the birthday boy for today. October 25th is a baseball pitching icon who pitched for 5 teams, and a couple of them were major moves. This guy had been 4th in winning percentage in MLB history when he retired. One of the best ERAs since 1920. He actually is the 3rd fastest to 3,000 strikeouts by innings, behind only Randy Johnson and Max Scherzer. And he's done his job. He was dominant. His peak was between 1997 and 2003, where he was just basically the best pitcher around, even though that his team was not really playoff there. And he was only 5'11", 170 pounds. But this man is amazing. He got to the Hall of Fame in 2015, becoming the second Dominican Republic player after Juan Marichal to get in. His number 45 was retired by the Red Sox. His name, Pedro Martinez. He was now 52 years old. So Pedro grew up in the Dominican Republic. You know, a palm wood house with a tin roof and dirt floors. His mother would work for traditionally wealthy families washing their clothes. Pedro was a mechanic of that. He would be in the Dominican Winter League. As an amateur free agent, Los Angeles decided, let's take this guy. And he tried to simulate to the United States. He made his major league debut September 92 for the Dodgers, getting 2 innings of relief. He even pitched a start for the Dodgers against the Reds, but lost. Ramon Martinez, Pedro's brother, was a starter for the Dodgers and pretty good. So anyway, Tommy Lasorda actually figured that Pedro would be too small for the MLB level because of his stature and all that. So he made him a relief pitcher. Pedro was good as the stand-up man for the Dodgers, winning 10 games. But the Dodgers had problems because Jordy Reed was in a contract dispute. So the Dodgers, needing a second baseman, decided to grab Montreal's Delano DeShields and sent Pedro to Montreal, thinking that Pedro will never be a starting pitcher. Well, that's where the Dodgers were really wrong. In fact, Pedro had a good fastball, but he had control issues. It was during a bullpen session that Felipe Alou, the manager of the Expos, encouraged him to modify his grip from 2-seam to 4-seam grip. And he was at better control and all that. Pedro actually had a perfect game through 7 1/3 in a second start with the Expos in 94 in Montreal against Cincy. Unfortunately, he threw a brushback pitch at Reggie Sanders that, led Sanders to charge them out. Pedro lost the perfect game and got a no decision. So Pedro was one of the decent pitchers of the 94 Expos when they should have went to the World Series or the playoffs at the very least, but that stupid strike. His next flirtation with a perfect game happened June 3rd, 1995, Montreal and San Diego. He pitched 9 perfect innings against the Padres. One tiny little problem. The Expos couldn't score, so thus the game had moved to the 10th. And it was huge and all that. Unfortunately, though, in the bottom of the 10th, Cuero Ferraz hit a line shot single. Pedro's perfect game was gone, and he was removed from the game. Mel Rojas came in to save the day as Montreal won the game 1-0, but Pedro could have had a perfect game. After a few decent seasons in 97, he was much better. He was 17-8 for the Expos, led the National League in ERA, strikeouts, and complete games pitched. So a 1.90 ERA and 305 strikeouts. He possessed everything going for it. He had 13 complete games, which is very high and all of that. In fact, Pedro was the first right-handed pitcher to have 300 strikeouts and an ERA under 2 since Walter Johnson in 1912. That's how dominant he was. So Canada had both Cy Youngs, as Pedro for the Expos and Clemens for the Jays had it. Unfortunately, he was approaching free agency, and the Expos knew that it would be expensive to keep him. So they traded him to Boston in November '97 for Carl Bofano and Tony Armas, well, Jr. Martinez was given a 6-year, $75 million contract, and it was huge, $12 million a year, 12 and a half. I mean, Pedro had immediate dividends in '98, going 19-7 with a pretty good ERA and strikeouts, second in the American League behind Clemens. And those categories, and the Cy Young Award went to Clemens. In 1999, Pedro did much better, getting 23 wins with a 207 ERA and 313 strikeouts. Leading the American League in wins, ERA, and strikeouts, he got the pitching triple crown. He led the entire major leagues with strikeouts per 9 with 13.2. He looked very good and all that. So Pedro became the 9th pitcher to get at least two 300 strikeout seasons in the modern era, since 1920, of course. In fact, Pedro was the only 20th century pitcher to have 300 strikeouts in a season, but not be 6 foot. Pedro won his second Cy Young in '99. Why would you deny him? And he finished second in MVP voting. Pedro did get the most first place votes, but, you know, it was just huge and all that. Pudge Rodriguez did win the thing and all that. Regardless of that, Pedro looked pretty good, and he was the starting pitcher in the '99 All-Star Game at Fenway Park, striking out Barry Larkin, Larry Walker, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Jeff Bagwell in 2 innings pitched. So 5 of his 6 outs were strikeouts. He was All-Star Game MVP for that. It was just amazing and all that. Pedro had a strained back, but in the playoffs, Boston needed to beat Cleveland. It was the 5th and final game of the LDS. Winner moved on to the LCS. Pedro couldn't start the game. By the 4th, it was 8-8, and Pedro went to the bullpen and worked out of the bullpen. He was brought in and pitched 6 no-hit innings against Cleveland, as Boston would score 4 runs. It was just one of the best moves ever. In fact, Pedro beat the Yankees in Game 3 of the '99 LCS. In fact, that was the only time the Yankees lost that postseason. Pedro did a good season in 2000 to get his 3rd Cy Young. His ERA dipped to 1.74, which was amazing. He was 18-6. All that. So, he did what he could. In fact, his whip, aka walks plus hits per inning pitch, was .74, the second lowest in Major League history. So basically, he would give up less than 1 walk or hit per inning. Pedro struck out 284 guys, and it was just amazing what he could do. Unfortunately, Pedro would spend much of 2001 on the disabled list with a rotator cuff injury. He did get 163 strikeouts in 116 innings. And then in 2002, when he was healthy, he rebounded to lead the AL in ERA and strikeouts, winning 20 games. However, Barry Seidel was given the Cy Young for some strange reason. Pedro led in ERA, whips, strikeouts, and winning percentage, and yet he didn't get the Cy Young. That was kind of stupid. Pedro was 14-4 in 2003 and was injured quite a bit. He did lead the league in ERA and took second in the strikeout thing by just 1 strikeout, but Doc Holliday won the Cy Young. Pedro went 16-9 with an uncharacteristically high 3.9 ERA. finished fourth in Cy Young voting. Pedro pitched effectively in the playoffs, winning Game 2 of the LDS. In the ALCS, he pitched Game 3 of the World Series. Well, in the ALCS, he lost the postseason when Yankees fans were taunting him, "Who's your daddy?" In Game 3 of the World Series, he pitched 7 shutout innings and looked pretty good, helping the Red Sox win the World Series. Pedro would be 117 wins, 37 losses, a .760 winning percentage in Boston with a 2.52 ERA and 1,683 strikeouts. Pedro was a free agent and Boston didn't sign him. Boston should have signed him again. The Mets offered him a 4-year, $53 million contract, or $13 million a year, if you will. Pedro won 15 games in his first year with the Mets with a 2.82 ERA. Pedro looked pretty good and all that. Unfortunately, he would have a hip problem, and then he would have disabled list issues and all that. Pedro had problems. He had torn muscle in his left calf and a torn rotator cuff. So he was basically out for the 2007 season. There were rumors that Pedro was going to retire and all that. Anyway, Pedro that year in 2007 became the 4th pitcher to reach 3,000 strikeouts with fewer than 1,000 walks, as Fergie Jenkins, Greg Maddux, and Curt Schilling have previously done so, and became the first Latin American pitcher to have 3,000 strikeouts. 2008 was a lost season. Just 4 innings into his first game against the Marlins, he was hurt. He felt a pop in his left leg, and he had a strained hamstring. He was out for 2 months. His velocity dropped, and he was 5-6, making him. That was the first time he had a losing season, and all that. Pedro's 5.61 ERA was really bad. In his 4-year deal with the Mets, he was 32-23 with a 3.88 ERA, far removed from his Red Sox days. In Philadelphia, well, anyway, free agent, he didn't sign with the team. No one signed him. So he went to the Dominican Republic squad for the 2009 Baseball Classic to showcase his arm. But no contract was forthcoming. But Philly scouts gave him a 1-year deal in July 2009. So he won his debut replacing Jamie Moyer in the starting rotation and all that. Pedro beat the Mets, and that was the game when he went to the Citi Field. That game was the Eric Bruntlett triple play, right? When he did the unassisted triple play. Pedro won his next start, and that actually made him the 10th pitcher in history to win 100 games in each league, the American League and National League, of course. Pedro would beat the Mets again later on in September. And Philly actually won each of Martinez's first 7 starts. Pedro looked pretty good in the NLCS in 1 game, giving up just 2 hits in 7 innings. Unfortunately, the bullpen screwed him. Pedro would start Game 2 of the World Series when the Phillies went to Yankee Stadium and all that. He lost that game, though, too. So, anyway, Pedro was ready to pitch Game 6. Unfortunately, though, he gives up 4 runs, and the Yankees won the World Series the last time the Yankees have won the World Series as of this taping. The rumors said he would retire, but he said he had no intention in it. But no one signed him. And the Phillies were trying to get him back for a half season. But nothing happened. But by December 2011, he decided to retire. So anyway, Pedro was given a chance to compete for the National Baseball Hall of Fame voting. And in his first season, he got 91% of the vote. He's wearing a Boston Red Sox cap on his plaque. I know you want to see, some people want to see an Expos picture of Pedro, but I decided to go with Boston. Boston would retire his number 45. All that. And he was part of the 2018 Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame class, which was very good. The Canadians would honor him like that way. He works for MLB Network and MLB on TBS. So, anyway, it was huge, all that. So yeah, he had many great starts and all that. So yeah, lots of things. Unfortunately, Pedro would also be remembered for his missed plays in the 2003 LCS. In Game 3, there was a testy game and all that. Pedro, for some reason, decided to go after Don Zimmer, the 72-year-old bench coach of the Yankees. And Martinez threw Zimmer to the ground. Anyway, Martinez said that was a massive regret. And also, Game 7 of the 2003 World Series, he had a chance, LCS, sorry. He had a chance to get Boston to the World Series, but unfortunately his bravado, if it will, cost him as he gave up key runs in the 8th inning. All that. Yeah, everyone says, who's your daddy? He had a good pitching style, and he's married to a former ESPN sideline reporter. He has 4 children. Pedro Martinez Jr. signed with the Tigers as an international free agent. Another son signed at Nova University in Fort Lauderdale. He has a son and a daughter. Extra. So Pedro Martinez was just a coincidental pitcher. He knew what he had. He had amazing stuff, and that's all there is to it. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.